This is the true story of Zara Aleena. She believed that no woman should have to worry about walking home alone, and she led by example. But on one such walk after a night out, she would cross paths with the antithesis of everything that she was and what she stood for. What would become of Zara? Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Welcome back to CASE Documentaries. I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing with regular uploads every week. Please do join the quickly growing, incredibly supportive CASE family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications. Remember, choosing to be kind can save a life in many ways. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with me. Our love and respect goes out to those that knew and loved Zara and all those affected by this case. Zara Natasha Aleena was her mother's only child. Growing up, she loved ballet, tap dancing, and skating. Even as a child, she was an extrovert. She could talk for hours, but she was a great listener too. Zara, or Zash to her close friends, knew what she wanted in life from the age of just 5. Zara was going to be a lawyer. When she put her mind to something, nothing would stop her. Zara worked hard to earn a law degree from the University of Westminster. She was strong and independent, and by the time she was 35 years old, she was a trainee solicitor who had just started at the Royal Courts of Justice. Her dreams were all coming true. She told her friend that she was as happy as she'd ever been, and that she could now start thinking of her future and starting a family of her own. Things were falling into a perfect place. On the 25th of June 2022, Zara met a friend for a catch-up. They met at a local pub, the Great Spoon of Ilford. There they had dinner and a drink before moving on to a bar. Here, Zara only drank water, but the two were just enjoying each other's company. At around 2 AM, they called it a night. The friend got in a cab, but Zara decided to walk. She was close to home and it was a warm evening. Ilford is a bustling, diverse area in East London. Zara began to head home along Cranbrook Road, a well-lit residential street just 10 minutes walk from her house. Here she arrived at the junction of Cranbrook Road at the same time as a man, in what would be described as a fatal coincidence. The man had also been in the Great Spoon of Ilford earlier in the evening, but he was kicked out after harassing a female bartender. He staggered around the streets of Ilford, following different women. This is the real CCTV of his actions. One woman, noticing he was trailing her, dived into a supermarket to hide. He marched up and down the aisles looking for her before waiting outside. Later, he went into a chicken shop, staring at a female customer. He had his hands down his trousers, and he then followed her too. But she luckily managed to lose him. He then followed a third woman along the street. When she noticed him, he overtook her, pretending to enter a house. But in fact, he was just hiding in a driveway, lying in wait. Fortunately, the woman went into her own house before she reached him. Wandering back to Cranbrook Road, the man spotted a fourth woman. This was Zara Aleena. He crossed the road to begin walking closely behind her. He followed her for a while along the well-lit road. He was caught on camera several more times before he took his opportunity to grab her. He pounced on Zara from behind, placing one arm around her neck and a hand over her mouth. She was now just minutes from home. The fact that Cranbrook Road was a busy road, it had traffic flow and residential houses, as well as CCTV cameras. This didn't deter the man. He dragged Zara to the ground and into the dark shadows of a driveway. She fought back so hard that she was able to stand back up, but he struck her again repeatedly until she fell unconscious. He removed some of her clothing before forcing himself on her. He then kicked and stamped on Zara. CCTV, which captured the full attack, showed him walking away from the scene twice, but returning to viciously stamp on her once again. He used a fence post for balance to maximize the power of his blows. The attack lasted 9 minutes. He then stole her purse, keys, phone, leggings, and underwear. What he didn't want to keep was just strewn on the pavement nearby. Zara lay alone for 20 minutes before she was discovered by 2 passing couples. She was terribly injured and struggling to breathe. Paramedics were called at 2:44 a.m. and for over an hour they desperately tried to save her life on that driveway. She was then taken to the Royal London Hospital. Surgeons fought tirelessly throughout the morning, but tragically her injuries were just too great. Zara Aleena's life officially ended at 9:58 a.m. A post-mortem examination revealed that Zara had suffered 46 separate injuries in a 9-minute attack. Severe blunt force trauma to her head, deep lacerations to the scalp, bruising to the lips, eyes, nose and jaw, as well as to intimate areas. Her cause of death was traumatic brain injury and prolonged pressure to the neck. The brutality of the attack is almost impossible to imagine, but it was this brutality that caused Zara's killer to leave crucial evidence. 2 fingerprints were left on the fence post he had used to balance himself whilst he attacked. However, both prints were only partial, and neither of them were sufficient enough to generate a match from the millions of prints in the fingerprint database. But the police wasted no time. They collected CCTV footage and very quickly worked their way backwards from the attack, piecing together the suspect's movements in the lead-up. Investigators noticed something significant. He was wearing what they described as a prison-issue vest. This was someone who had been in trouble with the law previously and perhaps recently. An image was circulated around local police stations, and one vigilant officer recognized the man from a previous arrest. He was able to provide a name, and therefore the partial prints were compared to the ones they had on file for this potential suspect, and it was a positive match. The man's name was Jordan McSweeney. But it wasn't just CCTV of his movements before the crime that they gathered. They watched him walk back down Cranbrook Road after the attack, before making his escape by climbing a wall into nearby Valentine's Park. There he entered a fairground and made his way to a set of caravans towards the back. Valentine's Park skirts Cranbrook Road, and at the time there was a carnival or travelling fairground on it. Police made their way there and passed around the picture. The staff recognised McSweeney immediately and pointed towards a caravan. He's in that caravan, there, asleep, they told the police.
Jordan McSweeney?
Cuffs on, yeah.
Can you stand up for us, mate?
Just tell him.
You're under arrest for rape and murder of a female at Cranbrook Road.
Right?
Okay?
I've got it. Yep. Come forward.
Just going to search you now, alright?
Less than 72 hours after Zara drew her final breath, McSweeney was arrested on the 29th of June. Jordan was 29 years old and a career criminal. He had 28 convictions for 69 previous offences: burglary, assaults on police and members of the public, driving offences, shoplifting, criminal damage, racially aggravated harassment, possession of a weapon, theft of a vehicle. A long and varied career. As a child, he took part in bare-knuckle fights for cash, and he was expelled from 2 schools, one for selling illicit substances to other kids. Much of his childhood was spent in and out of youth offender institutes, and this trend continued into adulthood. Prior to Zara's attack, he had served 9 separate prison sentences. Even in prison, he managed to notch up over 100 separate incidents: violence, threatening guards, misogynistic behaviour towards female staff members. He even started a fire in prison and took part in a riot. This riot saw one guard requiring emergency treatment for a wound to the head made by a sharp implement. And unsurprisingly, McSweeney also had a history of domestic maltreatment. He had a restraining order placed on him by one ex-partner, and a ferocious attack on another almost left her blinded in one eye, resulting from a kick to the face. Following his arrest, McSweeney was interviewed by police 3 times. Knowing how to play the system, he refused to answer any questions. He wouldn't even provide his name or information on where he lived. The only time he spoke was to make threats. He told one officer he was going to bite his face off. He showed nothing but disrespect for the situation that he'd found himself in, right up until the point he was formally charged with Zara's murder. He didn't deny that the CCTV images were of him, and he didn't show a shred of remorse. In fact, at one point, he yawned loudly and complained he was bored. His crime had been opportunistic, and he knew it. He should have been in prison on the night of Zara's murder. Jordan McSweeney had only been released from prison 9 days earlier. He'd served part of a sentence for robbery before he was released on license. This was on the condition that he attended regular meetings with his probation officers. Released on June the 17th, he missed an appointment that very same day, and then another on June the 20th. The police weren't informed to arrest him for another 4 days on June the 24th. Police went to the address that they had on record for him, his mother's house. This was on June the 25th. But he wasn't there. This was the morning before the murder. An internal review later revealed that a series of errors and miscommunication meant that, despite his long history of violence, he'd been incorrectly labelled as a medium risk to society. He had no tag, and there was what has been described as no clarity whatsoever on where he'd been living. The evidence against McSweeney was overwhelming. Already the CCTV footage and the fingerprints placed him at the scene. But there was more. Police obtained footage from the fairground. This was captured the afternoon following the attack. McSweeney is seen wearing the same prison-issue vest and carrying a bag. He reappears just minutes later, shirtless and bagless. The bag was found hidden beneath the skirting of another caravan inside the park. Inside was the vest and his shoes, covered in Zara's DNA. He initially tried to blame all the DNA evidence on having been bitten by a dog. The weight of all this evidence against him gave him no alternative but to lie. McSweeney then pleaded guilty on all charges on November the 16th. Despite this, he still wasn't ready to face up to what he had done. When it came to his sentencing on December the 14th, he refused to leave his cell. The court saw this act as one final act of sheer disregard for Zara's life. At sentencing, the judge said, after satisfying his lust, he proceeded to destroy the woman he had just degraded. With sickening deliberation, he stamped on her. The defendant had the physical advantages of strength and surprise. In everything else, she was better than him. She was talented, spirited, intelligent, and kind. The defendant is a pugnacious and deeply violent man, with a propensity for violence. I have no doubt Jordan McSweeney intended to kill Zara Aleena. The nature of his attack, stomping on her head, and the fact he returned twice drives me to the conclusion that this was a determined intention to kill. Jordan McSweeney was sentenced to life imprisonment. He will serve 38 years as the minimum term. Given his previous track record in prison, it's likely he will never see freedom again. Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? What do you think could be done to avoid something like this happening again in the future? Let me know down in the comments. Please do hit like if you appreciate what I'm doing here. Thank you to everyone in the Dark Case crew. You too can become a channel member for just 99 pence. A huge thank you to all my patrons. Your support makes a massive difference. You too can support my work and be thanked in every video for just $5 per month. So thank you to Rachel David, Kathy Green, Green, David James, Addie Alexander, Karen Jones, El Palmieri, James Harrington, Shane Woodward, Faster River, Stacey Krogerus, Summer Chambers, Mona Corona, Cepheid Variable, Anthony Watson, Jason Coward, Gar the Impaler, Jeremy Sebranek, Joy Burton, Dawn Crock, Michelle Mims, Natalie Lundquist, Anita Ford, Christina Garzon, Annette Parkins, Austin Lounsbury, and Darlene. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.